This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you want to create a beautiful online portfolio, have an online store, or membership space, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build an online presence and run your business.
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I am like looking at myself in my camera and I'm like, wow, I have like big, like cool, like artsy, like businesswoman and like the early 90s vibes going on, like with this like look that I have. My hair's not hot rolled, but it just kind of feels big and wild and I like it. I dig it. Baby dreams are coming true. Okay. Maybe I'll find a Ghostbuster.
There is no Dana. There is only Zoo.
We are continuing on this Edwardian couture evening ensemble adventure that I have ran down screaming, and I'm running back the other way going, I have regrets! I got some measurements according to the American system of dressmaking to draft out the bodice pattern. Now this book, drafting book, specifically these instructions are from 1904. It is the best option I have found. Margaret Blair does have options, but I used her instructions for the late 1890s, and there was a lot of fiddling. You guys haven't seen that footage yet because I'm still not done with that bodice, just by the way. So one day you'll see it. But those instructions, that basic bodice pattern really wasn't that friendly with my particular body type and like how I'm set up and like my bustiness and like the ratios and stuff. So I wanted to try something else, different instructions, just to see if maybe like these instructions might just work better for my body. Now, to draft this out, hold on.
12 seconds later.
Normally for drafting patterns, I use my big roll. You all have seen it with like the gridded paper in 1-inch squares marked on it. That's like really typical classic pattern drafting paper for garments. But for smaller pieces and like smaller bodices, I actually really like to use 4x4 gridded paper that you buy at the office supply store because it's 1-inch squares with smaller squares on the inside. See what I mean? Can you see that? Maybe. I don't know. You'll see. You'll see it in the video. But it's a lot easier to do like smaller manipulations and like to make sure things are very specific when it comes to like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. And also, like side pro note, this stuff is great too for other patterning things or reinforcing bonnets. Just, you know, in case you're curious, never throw anything away. Everything's useful.
So I actually found the drafting instructions from this manual extremely easy to follow, which is a huge win for old drafting manuals because sometimes they are so confusing. But a pro tip here, you can see it in the image. I actually copied the drafting guide image. I expanded it in Affinity, which is like Photoshop, and then I relabeled everything with the lines and the points. So that way I could very clearly and easily see what I was drafting instead of having to like squint and look at this very, very small image with sometimes the graphics not being super duper clear. So I highly recommend doing that if you can.
Having fun, like nice. Right off the bat, I'm like, yeah. Yeah. Oh. Oh, did you just start in the pants? Okay. I was like, seriously, self? Like, really? Yeah, it's looking kind of like, okay, same shit, different decade. So long as my tits aren't hanging out the sides, I think we're good.
I mean, I think until we actually get it recut and everything, we're not really gonna know for sure.
Okay, so we are finished with the fitting. I have transferred everything on the fitted bodice piece to paper. I've marked out the new darts and like the fish dart here. I made the adjustment for the neckline because I needed to add a lot here. We had that little dart here at the arm's eye. I just kind of worked this into the pattern. Hopefully that'll be okay. But I just kind of wanted to show you guys how different this looks compared to this one, compared to that one. So this is why fittings are important. Shapes definitely change, darts change, curves change. Like this is obviously a much curvier pattern, especially here at the center front because I am extremely curvy. So this makes sense for me, especially since I have a very full bust like having the room in here for the bust is really important. That little fish dart is also really important. So we also changed the shape here, so you can see it sits much higher here on the hip, and then it comes down ever so slightly to the front here, versus, you know, this initial draft where it's very straight. You know, it's not curvy at all. This shape is not too different from this shape. It just kind of nips in a little bit here, which is to be expected. The arm's eye is a little bit different, and this keeps changing. This is also a much more squared off neckline, and it does kind of taper down a little bit. When we were looking at images of women from this period, this very square, wide neckline's a thing, but it's not super low. So, like, yeah. We added a lot. So that's where we're at. So I just need to do the same thing for the back pieces and the side pieces, but this front piece is where a lot of the changes happened. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to show you guys what it looked like. And this is why fitting's important.
Before we continue the sewing journey, let's take a minute to learn more about the sponsor of this week's video, Squarespace.
So friends, I am still slowly working on building my new website so I can have one centralized space to share videos, photos, and more. I had already decided on using Squarespace to create and host my website, so it was quite serendipitous when they reached out to me about sponsoring this video. I love Squarespace's templates and that Squarespace has options that fit a variety of different needs, whether it's a blog or an online store, and with loads of plugins and personalization options, it's super easy to customize any template to suit your needs. Another great feature that Squarespace offers is membership-only areas, making it easier to build connections with your audience, as well as hosting online courses, which I just think that's super cool. Currently, I'm working on building my website, and hopefully I'll be able to launch it soon. If you're looking to build yourself a new website or online store, head on over to squarespace.com/abbycox to save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain using code abbycox. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. All right, so here's where I'm at. This is moving actually pretty quickly just because it's lining in. For bodices, the 90% of the work actually happens after the basic construction. So I've gotten the seams all stitched, they're pressed, and I am now overcasting the raw edges like I see in the original couture bodices. So what I've done are the side seams here. Those are going to be on the inside. So those are going to be what's against my skin. The center back seam you can see here is like right side out. So it's on the exterior of the lining. So the silk satin's gonna be like facing this. So this raw edge is gonna be wedged between the fashion fabric and the lining. And the reason I did that, even though it's not in the that I have in my collection, I do see it in some other really nicely made bodices. And what I liked about that and my kind of like thought process with this is that if Chrissy needs to kind of tweak some fitting points, especially at the center back, like she can easily nip that in at the center back, and that seam's gonna easily be stitched back up without me having to, like, you know, mark it and bring it over and then transfer it. You know, like it's like messed up. So I'm like, okay, well, hopefully that will work out okay. And if we do need to do some tweaking at the center back, like that'll make it easier for her. So what I'm doing now is I'm spinning in my chair because it's a spinning chair and that's a lot of fun. And then once that's set to go, it is time to do the fitting.
Wait, hold on. I'm gonna take that
One
as a
second.
sign. 1 second. I'm gonna shove the tank top out of the way. Okay, you sit. Oh God, we got nipples all over the place.
Real quick. No, your back looks great actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as we expected, we don't actually have to
Really do anything.
really do anything.
Cool.
We probably should cut the seam allowance relief on your arm size here. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm sure that will also fuck with shit.
Yeah.
So long as this is actually like pulled all the way down.
Oh God, I have to sneeze. You need to get out of the way.
I don't think that the camera caught Nicole throwing her body at the floor.
I was like, I do not
Get out
want to
of the
blow
way.
snot on your head on accident because I have nothing like but my bare arm.
After saving Nicole from having me accidentally unleash a violent sneeze on top of her head, we finished fitting and adjusting the silk taffeta bodice lining, pinning the darts, checking the fit at the center back, etc. Once it was off my body, I quickly stitched up the darts by hand and set out to work on the silk satin section of the bodice. I had patterned out that part of the bodice with the side back piece intact with the center back to minimize visible seam lines, which 10 out of 10 recommend. Now with the satin cut out, I opened up the side seams of the silk taffeta, basted the satin to the taffeta, and then I re-seamed the bodice back up by machine, and then redid my overcasting on the raw edges. Next, it was time to prep and stitch the boning. I encased the boning in thin silk taffeta ribbon, since that was the closest thing I had to the ribbon casing used in my originals, and then I stitched them into place using a running stitch. Since this bodice is short and the boning doesn't go over my hips or my bust, I didn't bother to try and spring the boning or do sprung boning or whatever it's called. I followed my fox bodice for this, and okay, so like this is never shown on camera at all, but all of my bodices that I used for last week's video on couture were still out, and I was constantly referencing them on how I should construct this bodice. So even though you don't see it, they're there. While I probably should have waited to do this part until after the net had been draped over the back of the bodice, both the satin and the taffeta fray terribly, so I wanted to encase the raw edges as soon as possible. Both in my originals, not all but some. And some sewing manuals say to add a bias strip of crinoline or tarlatan to the bottom of the bodice and use that for facing and finishing off the waist of the bodice. And I was actually really happy with how it helped hold the waist out, and it gave it just a little bit of structure and shape without it being super stiff. As for the net, I added several inches at the center back so I could kind of pleat it up and create this illusion of the gathers at the center back of the skirt going up into the bodice. It took me a few tries to settle on pleating it. Gathering was not working out the way I had hoped it would, but you know, that's neither here nor there. But eventually I did get there.
Also tighten the top of the corset if,
Oh no, it's fine. It's just because they're every other one, so I'm like,
oh, they're that kind. Those are a bitch.
yeah, I did this to
You crazy.
myself.
You did this to yourself.
Well, that's what I saw in the couture ones was this every other. So I just fucking committed.
I am so amused that my boobs are like nowhere near filling this out like yours do. I'm just like, now I feel inadequate. Thank you very much.
This bias front placket is how we're going to make the center front closures invisible and give this illusion of a no closures anywhere look. I was in a hurry when I cut this on Chrissy, and honestly, if I had been smarter about it, I would have cut it in muslin, touched up the pattern, and then cut it out in the silk. But I just went balls to the wall with it, and even though it's not perfect, it works actually pretty well, and it's nothing that a few bows, some ruffles, and a belt can't hide.
The dart makes sense now.
Yeah, this is the dart I was talking about.
I kind of had my head wrapped around it, but I was also tired, so I was like, yeah, sure, a dart. Yeah, that sounds right.
Sounds great, Abby. Yeah, no, that's gonna be boom.
Oh, damn, yeah.
Squeezy, got it real fast. Which is your bigger arm?
I assume this one because I'm right-handed.
Actually,
Happy location.
I don't have to cut it out all. It fits perfectly.
Nice.
So, just do.
Obviously, on the gauze, this will be very drapey.
Yeah.
And then just like, you know, a little bit of.
So I actually was really excited last night after we got the fitting done because I realized how much I had actually gotten done and how little there is left to do that's like big or intensive. A lot of this stuff is just making pretty shit and tacking it on. A lot of this now is like do a little bit of this, go back over here, do a little bit of that before I can do the step over there to do that. So it's a lot of like interesting cake layers, I guess you can say. We'll see how much of this I can clearly document and explain to you guys. But yeah, let's get to it. Ah!
The net I've been using for this project is the Swiss Point d'Esprit from B&J Fabrics, and I actually love working with it. It's got just a stiff enough hand that I can manipulate it pretty easily, but it's also still soft enough that it hangs and drapes beautifully. The straps are a specialty trim on silk tulle that I got from Mood. I had to pick out the stones and the beads bit by bit to get to the seam allowance that I needed to fold over and finish the edges. I stitched them to the silk taffeta straps, so they're not actually taking on any stress or pressure in wearing. Side note, one side's actually like a ½ inch shorter, but you can't see it because of bows and stuff. Don't tell anyone I told you.
All right, good morning, guys. I got a lot done yesterday. I didn't do a very good job recording all of it, but I am on track to getting the bodice done probably tomorrow. I could probably do it today if I really pushed, but knowing how many like fiddly hooks and eyes I have to put in like a bunch of locations, I'm just assuming that probably tomorrow is going to be a lot of hook and eye stitching, which is fine. I'm really happy with how it's turning out. I did the thing that I always do, which is I did something because I was like, this is the way I'm going to do it. This is the right way to do it. Yes. And then I did it. I was like, that was stupid. There's a better way to do this. I had to I'm kind of working around something that I did when it comes to facing satin placket. I also realized that I was going to make it super hard on myself by doing like the satin placket and then like having the drawstring of the gathering in the front and stuff. So what I did is I just took a panel of gauze, because you know this is actually the logical thing to do, and I did 2 rows of gathering stitches, and I just stitched it to the neckline of the placket, and then I've kind of roughly pinned where it needs to.
What weird bordello shit is this?
So I need to kind of figure out how to gather this up while it's on here in a way that's like kind of organized and not total chaos, and then get that stitched down so like the placket is done. That's kind of like the most important thing. And then, oh, I have to finish making the belt. I haven't actually even made the belt yet, but I need to make the belt. Where is the belt? Oh, it's right. It should be over there. So yeah, that's where we're at today. Sorry, I'm a little low energy. Chrissy actually left this morning for Portland, so I'm a little sad. I will remember you. So fingers crossed that I can get this all done in time for editing on Monday and Tuesday. I'm very tired, but that's where we're at. I gotta get this bodice finished. Once this bodice is finished, oh God, this is gonna be a huge weight off my shoulders. Then I can actually breathe and like, I don't know, clean my house, because you guys don't even know what my house looks like right now. It is a disaster with a capital D.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring.
I had to really fuss with the bottom to get it to lay smooth, have some tension, but also not too much tension because you gotta leave room for the girls. And then I stitched it down. I wasn't too worried about neatness since this is going to be covered by the belt. Once it was stitched down at the bottom, I pressed it, trimmed all the excess, folded it up, and then faced it in silk taffeta ribbon. So with these sleeves, they're not actually all the way around. They actually drape down my arm. So, oh, oops. So they're kind of like a cold shoulder outfit, and you see this a lot in Edwardian evening gowns. And so all I have to do, yay, with setting sleeves is just stitch the line here that Nicole has pinned for me, trim the excess seam allowance out, and then I'm going to actually bind the bottom in just a ribbon, because gauze is so finicky and fussy that that's like the only way to deal with it. All right, y'all, this silk gauze is an absolute pain in the ass to work with. So in order to stitch these down, I had to do a spaced back stitch that was pretty chunky for the initial stitching. You can't over sew silk gauze, like you cannot do tiny stitches or it's going to shred. And so let me tell you, the stuff is gorgeous, but it is a total bitch to work with, which is why I decided to make little circles of it for the sleeves. To finish the hem of the sleeves, I folded up the gauze once to the outside, I basted it into place. Then I basted a 1/4" tailor's tape over top of that, and then stitched down a row of sequins trim to finish it all off. Honestly, this part was my least favorite out of all of the construction of the bodice. I don't know why, it's actually pretty easy, but it just felt like it took an eternity to do, just to hem the sleeves of these damn things, and my hands are still sore from all of this marathon sewing. 7:23 on Monday, September 20th. I think it's the 20th today. I literally spent all morning and afternoon editing this video, and at like 3 o'clock, I basically hit the stopping point where I ran out of footage because I wasn't done with the bodice. And so I spent the rest of the afternoon and evening until now finishing the bodice, and it's done. So I guess now it's time for the mediocre reveal, because it's not the grand reveal, but a mediocre reveal. The grand reveal will happen in October. All in all, I'm actually really pleased with how this whole look has come together, and I'm really proud of the work that I've done for this piece. Pushing myself to take that extra time for trim, investing in the materials, and following my original bodices for construction guidance has taught me so much about Edwardian gown construction, and also just about my own abilities. It's really easy to fall into a cycle of thought that questions your ability to create beautiful things, and seeing this finished gown has really helped boost my own confidence in myself.
Okay. This was not a part of my plan for this morning. God, the video's due for review in like an hour and a half. So I had recorded a voiceover of this and I realized that this is a lot of talking and I don't want to like go dig for images. So here we are. We're in this swamp hag editing Abby look. In the first video I did with the skirt, I referenced how much materials I used and also my labor, and I made a mention about how I wanted to compare the total cost of this outfit with the costs that I could find in the period. Like, so it's trying to see in 2021 money if the cost of this gown with labor and materials is close to what would have been paid during the Edwardian era in the early 1900s. Here's everything. So here's the list of all the materials that I used and their costs and where I got them from. The total price of materials used. So this doesn't include materials that I ordered that I did not use, and there are a lot because I'm very indecisive. So the total estimate for materials, and again, it is a rough estimate, is around $845 USD. As for my labor prices, and this includes Chrissy and Nicole's labor for fitting, I settled on about $30 an hour for the calculations, though I probably should have actually done $40 an hour because this gown required a lot of specialty work and a lot of hand sewing, which should increase the value, but $30 puts it at roughly about $60,000 a year for a salaried income, which is basically the minimum of what you need to have here in Reno to have a decent, comfortable life. And this includes just the patterning, the construction, and the fitting time. It does not include research, filming, video editing, or anything like that. The total hours that this gown came out to is about 201 hours of construction time, which equals about $6,030. I'm not actually surprised by that cost at all. I actually thought it was less than, like, it's cheaper than what I thought it would be for labor. So that means the total cost of this gown is roughly $6,845 USD in 2021 money. Now, how much does this equal in the 1900s? I was able to find a official data thing calculator for 1902, and I don't really know why I've settled on 1902, but let's just go with it, guys. Is $1 equals about $32 today. So what that means is that this dress roughly comes out to about $215 in 1902 US money. So to compare that, Kenna was helping me a while ago and she found some catalog references for lingerie dresses, which are, you know, like the organdy with the lace insertion and stuff like that, for ready-made ones for about $5.75. That equates to about $175 in today's money. Then I was able to find a reference in a catalog book, magazine publication. It was like an industry publication called The Dry Goods Economist, and they had a gown, a lingerie, a dress in there that was designer, and it was hand embroidered with the highest quality real Irish lace used. So we're talking a lot of handwork, top tier stuff here, right? It's not a silk dress, it is cotton, but really, really high end. They stated that this gown would retail for about $700 in 1909. This dress, quote, shows the extravagance of modern dress. And the calculations for that in 1909 with inflation would put that dress at $21,000. Woo! What that tells me is that my dress, for what it is I think that kind of rough $6,000, $7,000 price tag that this dress would go for is actually pretty comparable to the period. Is it the highest in dress possible? No. I did use cheaper trims, like the lace I'm using is not the best quality lace I could have used. It is also really hard just to find affordably good lace nowadays. I think that kind of $7,000 price tag is actually pretty fair for what it is. Maybe, and it kind of, in my mind, sort of situates the dress where I kind of envisioned it too, which is basically it's not a ready-made department store, but it's also not the highest tier possible when it comes to like Edwardian couture, simply because I'm not using the same amount of materials. Like if I was using the right high quality lace and I had more trim on this thing, you know, then yeah, actually I probably could have gotten it up there in price, but I didn't because I couldn't and I didn't have time. So with that, I do hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you like hanging out with me, don't forget to subscribe. I post on Sundays, not every Sunday, but just, you know, on Sundays. And with that, I hope that you guys have a lovely rest of your week, and I will see you all back here next time. Bye! Damn, my hands, they're so hands are so sore. I'm so out of shape.
You just took that down
Do
like
you
3
know
inches.
me?
Take my feet, it's fine.
I have this almost straight.
What are boobs other than lung pillows?
It feels like it when I pet you.
It's not corn chippy, it's a little tangy. Come on, Jeffrey, you can do it. Come on, put your rock into it. Jeffrey Bezos. I saw an Amazon truck drive by.
Oh, okay.
And then it's like, the moment it drives by, it's like almost like an ice cream truck, but it's like that song starts playing in your head. Come on, Jeffrey.